OpenAI just shipped a new way for AI models to find and use digital tools on their own. Google has an LLM running in production that diagnoses failing integration tests with 90% accuracy. Cursor, the AI code editor, is raising $2 billion at a $50 billion valuation, and Cloudflare just dropped an entire week of agent infrastructure releases. Today on No BS AI Briefing, what all of this means if you're building products right now, and one thing you can actually do about it before the week is out. No BS AI Briefing, brought to you by Proactive AI. Welcome back, I'm your host Vikash Sharma, and this is where builders get straightforward AI news without the fluff. First up, OpenAI shipped GPT 5.4 on April 17th, and the headline feature is something they're calling tool search. This changes how the model interfaces with digital tools. Instead of you explicitly wiring up which tools a model can call, tool search lets the model find and select the right tool from a broader set dynamically at runtime. For builders, this is a meaningful architectural shift. If the model can search for its own tools, your integrations become more composable and less brittle. You stop hard coding capability lists and start thinking in terms of tool libraries. There's also a restricted variant called GPT 5.4 Cyber, built specifically for cybersecurity use cases and available to select partners under a trusted access program, which signals that OpenAI is seriously productizing AI for security teams, not just shipping general purpose models. Next, Google shipped something quietly important, a system called Auto-Diagnose that uses Gemini 2.5 Flash to automatically identify the root cause of failing integration tests. This has been running in production since May 2025 and is wired directly into their code review workflows. The reported accuracy is 90.14% across 71 real-world failures. And the thing worth noting is that they achieved this with prompt engineering alone, no fine-tuning required. For builders, this is directly applicable. Integration test failures are some of the most expensive and time-consuming debugging tasks in any engineering org, and Google has essentially built an LLM-powered debugger that works at scale. The prompt engineering approach means you could adapt this pattern to your own test suite without a dedicated ML team or a fine-tuning budget. That's a meaningful signal about what's achievable with off-the-shelf models today. Also, Cloudflare dropped what they're calling Agents Week, a suite of new tools specifically for building and running AI agents on their platform. The releases include artifacts for structured output generation, a sandbox for safe code execution, agent memory for persistent state across conversations, AI search, an agent called Agent and an agent readiness score that evaluates whether your existing infrastructure can support agents. This is Cloudflare making a clear platform bet. They want to be the infrastructure layer for the agentic web. For anyone already running on Cloudflare workers, this is a significant capability expansion without spinning up new infrastructure. The agent readiness score in particular is worth running against your current stack. It gives you a concrete diagnostic on where your gaps are before you invest in building. Next, Cursor, the AI first code editor, is in advanced talks to raise $2 billion at a pre-money valuation of over $50 billion. Andreessen Horowitz is reportedly co-leading the round, with Nvidia and Thrive Capital expected to participate. Cursor launched publicly less than 2 years ago. For builders, this isn't just a funding headline, it's a market signal about where the leverage in software development is being repriced. A $50 billion valuation tells you that investors believe whoever controls the developer workflow controls a choke point in how all software gets built. We'll go deeper on this in the main segment. And finally, the major Wall Street banks are no longer running chatbots. JPMorgan Chase, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Citi are now deploying autonomous AI workflows for document drafting, research synthesis, trade support, and proxy voting. JPMorgan has an internal system called the LLM suite. Goldman is running something called Agent Force, and a model referred to as Claude Mythos Preview is being used for vulnerability discovery and red team security exercises. This matters because financial services has some of the most rigorous compliance and risk requirements of any industry. And if these institutions are moving from assisted to autonomous workflows, it means the reliability bar for agentic AI has crossed a threshold that the broader enterprise market will now follow. The story I want to go deeper on today is Cursor's $2 billion raise. What happened? Cursor, built by a small team at a company called Anysphere, is in advanced talks to close a funding round that would value it at over $50 billion pre-money. The round is being co-led by Andreessen Horowitz, with Nvidia and Thrive Capital expected to participate. Cursor launched publicly less than 2 years ago and has grown almost entirely through word of mouth among developers. If this closes at the reported figures, it would make Cursor one of the most rapidly valued software companies in history. Why it matters right now? This is not primarily a funding story, it's a market structure story. Investors are making an explicit bet that the interface layer for software development is being permanently restructured around AI, and that whoever controls that layer controls a choke point in how all software gets built. The $50 billion number is the signal worth paying attention to. That valuation implies investors expect Cursor to capture dominant share of developer tooling globally within the next decade. Nvidia's participation as a hardware company is particularly telling. Chip manufacturers don't invest in code editors unless they believe the code editor is becoming infrastructure. When that framing takes hold, the competitive dynamics change completely. You're no longer in the productivity software category. You're in the foundational infrastructure category, which has very different defensibility and margin characteristics. Who should care? Founders building developer tools need to take an honest look at their roadmap and ask a direct question. Is AI a feature in our product, or is it the product? Cursor answered that question early and clearly, and the growth curve reflects it. Product managers at companies where engineering teams are using Cursor should be updating their velocity assumptions. If your developers are shipping meaningfully faster, your roadmap capacity math changes, and your sprint planning benchmarks are stale. And indie hackers and solo builders should study Cursor's adoption strategy carefully. They won by making the switching cost zero and the productivity delta obvious within the first session. That is a repeatable playbook in other categories. You don't have to build a code editor to apply it. How I'd think about it as a builder, the useful mental model here is the IDE transition cycle, from TextMate to Sublime to VS Code, except AI is compressing those cycles from years to months. Each time the dominant tool changed, a window opened for building editor adjacent products, and then it closed. We are in that open window right now for AI native developer tooling, and it will not stay open indefinitely. The second thing worth holding on to is what I'd call the cursor test for your own product. Can a new user feel a meaningful, undeniable productivity lift within the first 30 minutes of using it? If yes, you have a cursor-shaped opportunity in your category. If no, you're building a feature that competes on incremental value, which is a much harder game. The third observation is strategic. Cursor didn't win by out-engineering VS Code. They won by making one clear bet, that AI first means AI everywhere in the product, and executing it without hedging. That kind of strategic clarity is rarer than most teams think. My no BS take: $50 billion is aggressive, and the real risk is not abstract. OpenAI, Google, or Microsoft could ship a deeply integrated competitive product and commoditize this layer. GitHub Copilot already tried, and Cursor outran it, but that doesn't make the threat go away. The actual moat here is developer habit and trust, which are genuinely sticky once set, but they are not permanent. If you're evaluating Cursor as a competitor or a comparable, the question to watch is not the valuation, it's whether the team maintains their shipping velocity against much larger organizations. If you want one practical takeaway from today's episode, here it is. Spend 30 minutes this week running Cloudflare's new Agent Readiness Score against your current stack, and then prototype with one of their new agent primitives. Here's how to do it. Step 1. Go to the Cloudflare Agents Week blog post. It's linked in the show notes, and read through the 6 new releases. You don't need to go deep on all of them. Scan for the one that maps to a problem you already have on your list. The sandbox is the right starting point if you've been nervous about letting an AI agent execute code without guardrails. Agent memory is worth looking at if you've been hacking around stateless LLM calls and piecing together your own persistence layer. Step 2, if you're already on Cloudflare workers, spin up a new worker and wire in one of these primitives against a toy use case. Something you can describe in one sentence. The goal isn't to ship anything, the goal is to understand the primitive well enough to evaluate whether it belongs in a real project. Step 3, run the agent readiness score against your infrastructure. Even if you don't act on the results today, it gives you a concrete vocabulary for the conversation you'll eventually have with your team about agent infrastructure readiness. Why this is worth your time right now. The biggest bottleneck for most teams trying to deploy AI agents isn't the model, it's the infrastructure around it. Persistent memory, safe execution environments, and tool search are the three problems that kill most agent prototypes before they ship. Cloudflare just packaged solutions to all three into their existing platform. The teams that get familiar with these primitives in the next few weeks will move faster when the right project arrives. That window is open now. That's it for today's No BS AI briefing. If this helped, follow the show in your podcast app and share it with one builder you know. And if you've got questions or topics you want covered, connect with me on LinkedIn and send them over. See you in the next briefing.